Say, man, I want to welcome y'all to the Cronkite Show in social media history, minus the music. I got my man Donovan Sadiq in the building, the Queen Demetra K, and I got a phenomenal lady that's running for the Texas State Supreme Court, Judge Staci Williams, sitting on the panel tonight. We gonna have a good talk tonight. I'm gonna start it off by saying I ain't never seen that many black people at the voting polls in the city of Houston in my life like I saw today. They voting like their life depended on it, and it actually does. So it was good to see young, old, everybody at the polls today in the city of Houston. And man, all I can say, it was phenomenal. I got to see a bunch of old friends, but I got to see a bunch of first-time voters, people that, this they first time going in to cast a ballot. Well, Mr. Monroe, who should I vote for? Well, here's a list. Let me tell you now, because I don't do criminals. I do ethical people. And it was good today. What's going on, my friend Donovan?
Well, same thing out here in California. People are out there that voted for the first time. I mean, people are hand walking their ballots in, voting early if they're there. I went up to the registrar voter myself because I haven't received my absentee ballot. I've always voted absentee as a military person. And since I was there, I voted right then and there and just put it down. The funny thing is, I voted my constitutional rights and people still had a problem with it. I voted Green Party and they still had a problem with it. Black people, we are not monolithic. Your interests are not my interests. I'm about the money. I'm voting the money, but I voted basically Green Party because that's the only party that, to me, that is addressing Black issues and interests that I care about. So there it is. Demetra?
So hello, everybody on the War Zone. Welcome to Tuesday night, and a special big welcome to Judge Williams. Judge Staci or Judge Williams, what do you prefer?
Oh, everyone calls me Judge Staci, but you can call me Judge Williams, whatever is more comfortable, but I like Judge Staci.
Okay, so Judge Staci, so welcome. And yeah, so I too haven't received my absentee voter's ballot either, but I am going to go to the registrar tomorrow to cast my vote. And something else I was going to say, but it just slipped my mind. So yeah, I was going to say a lot of people who might be looking for Kanye, on the presidential side of the election, he is listed as a vice president nominee or candidate rather for the American Independent Party. And the top of the ticket, I forget his name, Rocky somebody. But it's kind of weird how that happened. So if you're looking for Kanye, he's actually in the vice presidential slot. So, Gary?
Well, you know me, I normally research my candidates, and I looked at every single race, and then I like suing people anyway, so I'm always in a courtroom somewhere. So I'm thinking one day I might end up at the Texas State Supreme Court, and I came across Judge Staci, so I said, let me do my homework on her. Let's see if she another one of these black folk that'll get in office and don't do their job and blah, 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 blah. So when I researched her, I was just like blown away, and I'm like, wow. So she's running for Texas State Supreme Court. So I looked at the 9 justices. I think it's 9. Am I right, Judge?
Yes.
9 justices that's on the State Supreme Court. And I say, well, might be time to add a little color to that. Some color, some integrity, and let's see if we can get some things done. And I started thinking, with the early ballot, the things that have been going on in Houston where they wanted to make sure everybody got mail-in ballots. Well, it got stopped at the Texas State Supreme Court. So I'm like, okay, hold on. Maybe we need to put somebody on there that can hear us, that really understand us. So I'm like, I researched her, and for me, it's a no-brainer. I didn't get into the booth today, but you can best believe if that line ain't long tomorrow, I'm getting in that booth, and I am voting for Judge Staci. I say I got some good friends on here from Dallas, Texas. We need everybody in Dallas, Texas voting for Judge Staci, man, Texas State Supreme Court. How you doing tonight, young lady?
Oh, I'm doing great. After 18 months of first having to get on the ballot and then going through the primary to actually be at the start of early voting. It's exhilarating, it's exciting, and we're ready to finish strong.
Well, tell the people a little bit about you and your history as far as being in the judge side.
Okay, well, currently I'm in my second term as a district court judge in Dallas, where I hear personal injury, medical malpractice, oil and gas, real estate, and kind of the general commercial issues. But prior to assuming the bench, I had 27 years of, I'm sorry, Donovan, I like the background. So I had over 27 years of legal experience. So I've not only been in-house corporate counsel in the telecommunications, retail, and defense industries, I've been an administrative judge for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. I was also an administrative judge for the EEOC. I was an arbitrator for DART, the U.S. Postal Service, NASDAQ FINRA, which adjudicates disputes between consumers and their brokerage houses, and the Washington Metropolitan Airport Board. So I have the depth and breadth of experience needed for the Texas Supreme Court, whereas my opponent came from big law, representing big corporations. Then he left big law and was an assistant attorney general for John Cornyn. Then he went back to big law, went back to the government. First, he was Rick Perry's chief of general counsel. He became Rick Perry's chief of staff. Phone call, hey boy, you want to get on Texas Supreme Court? Good job if you can handle it. He said, hey, why not? So that's how we got on the Texas Supreme Court. No judicial experience, no judicial training, no litigate. Well, I mean, he was a litigator for the state of Texas. He had a staff of a couple hundred, but no real experience. And he got on the Texas Supreme Court. And you know, we'll talk later, but it shows in his opinions. This isn't an academic exercise. When you sit and make decisions on the Texas Supreme Court, you are affecting the lives of individuals. And as you mentioned, Gary, vote by mail and the whole catastrophe with the foreclosures and evictions. You've got a whole bunch of justices up there who are totally out of touch.
Well, I tell you what, you're right about that, because I mean, if people trying to figure out, you know, they saying it's voter suppression by not allowing people to vote by mail because of the COVID. Well, it stopped at the Texas State Supreme Court.
Jerry, the funniest thing about it, it's sheer hypocrisy. Since March, the Texas Supreme Court building has been closed, and they've conducted all their hearings, all their meetings by Zoom because they fear of catching COVID. But yet they want to apply that same reasoning to the people of Texas who might not want to stand in line to vote for fear of COVID.
Well, I tell you, it's different. It's different out there for candidates and for poll workers. I mean, it didn't make a lot of sense to buy a lot of, you know, material to give away, like push cards, because people are even scared to take the push cards.
Definitely.
So, you know, the thing is I appreciate you taking the time out to come and sit down and talk to us. Donovan, you got it, my friend.
All right. Well, you know, I usually host a show out here called the Hot Seat Podcast. And right now I'm roasting all kinds of candidates here in California.
Keep it in California.
We have a lot of, yeah. So, you know, we do a little bit of our research. So I did a little bit of your research. Your background education, tell us a little bit about your background education, because if I'm correct,
yes,
you went to Georgetown, I believe. And
then
law school, right?
Smith College with a degree in economics, and I did a special studies in economics at Yale University, and I'm a graduate of the Hockaday School in Dallas.
Okay, and one of my questions that I have is why, well, not why, obviously you love law, but in your law background, how much law have you practiced, and then why did you decide to become a judge?
Well, I bring over 27 years of legal experience. If you're asking about trial experience, I was a trial attorney with the EEOC, primarily in federal court. Then also in private practice, at a small private practice, I did some criminal law, criminal trials. I represented a couple of small businesses in civil cases. So yeah, I've actually tried cases. And yes, I do know the rules of civil procedure and evidence.
Just a quick follow-up. Real quick too. You were initially appointed a judge, and then you ran for the judgeship in your own right?
No, not at all. So as a district court judge, no, I ran for election. And in fact, my first election in 2014, I ran against a 2-term incumbent. He had close to $1 million, had every endorsement in town. People were asking me, why are you running against him? But I said, I'd done my research. We ran a grassroots campaign, $35,000, and we took 62% of the vote.
Demetra?
So welcome once again, Judge Staci. And so I also did my research on you as well. And from what I understand, you went to a segregated school up until the time you were in the 2nd grade. You were one of 3 Black girls to graduate from your high school. So it sounds like you've been in a lot of firsts, and right at the inception of like the civil rights movement and things like that, or you were a benefactor rather, I guess, of that. And so if you are elected to the state Supreme Court, you will also be the first female Black judge. Is that correct? Okay. So I want to know why is that a big deal? Because a lot of times we hear, especially Black people say, "Oh, I'll be the first." And just my opinion, we heard, or we know what happened with Obama being the first Black president. A lot of Black people got big goose eggs because of that. I'm not saying that's true for you. But last week, we also were speaking of a candidate, or a mayor rather, in Missouri City. And she too was the first Black female to be elected as a mayor. And the people, the constituents there, and a couple of people who are opposing her said that she's done absolutely nothing with her Black woman title. And so one, why does that matter, you being the first Black female? And why should the voters care about that? And what are you going to do with that title to actually help Black people?
Okay, so let's do first. It really irritates me when people say, I'm the first Black, I'm the first that. It's one thing if you're the first Black judge to integrate the county courthouse, but to start splitting it, if you've got to start adding adjectives afterwards, you're really not. Because if you've truly been the first Black somewhere, you have suffered humiliation, you've experienced embarrassment, you've had some very hard times. So I don't really campaign on that. I do say in the 174-year history of the Texas Supreme Court, I will be the first African-American female on the bench, but it's not like I'm holding it up like, anoint me. Because if you truly have been, you're just kind of like, because you know what? There's some hard times that will follow. And if you've done it, you're like, okay, I'm quiet. But let me tell you what I have done without being the first African-American. Okay, like in the court, in the 101st District Court, I'm the first African-American female. All right, but I'm not the first African-American to be a judge in Dallas County. That happened 20 or 30 years ago. So I don't take that title. But what I have done is to ensure economic opportunity for African-American attorneys. Now, as a judge, I can appoint, their title's called guardian ad litem, and you appoint an attorney to represent the interests of a child. When I assumed my bench, that list looked like Dallas Country Club. Well, I've changed that. My ad litems reflect Dallas County. And so we've had a lot more African Americans, a lot more Hispanics, a lot more Asians serve as guardian ad litems in my court. Likewise for receivers. If a business is getting dissolved, you appoint a receiver. Receivers make a lot of money and they serve at the will and pleasure of the court. Likewise, I have integrated my receivers. And look, if you've done your research, I've gotten massacred in the Dallas Morning News for appointing a young Black African-American male to serve as a receiver for a Dallas landmark. But guess what? All it was noise, because I said receivers are appointed all the time in Dallas County. Why are they going to pick on Staci Williams? Well, they couldn't go to the Commission on Judicial Conduct. I followed the law. They just didn't like it that I gave that economic opportunity to a young Black male. So when I get to the Texas Supreme Court, there are other opportunities. Besides hearings, justices on the Texas Supreme Court make appointments to various boards, advisory boards. And again, you look at it, River Oaks Country Club. They're people of color who are qualified and should be put on those boards. So just like I've done in district court, I'm going to make those inroads at the Texas Supreme Court.
And let me also follow up with this. I also noticed too, you said that you were, when you were asked why you were running, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you said because you can bring a diverse, I guess a diverse opinion or diverse mindset. A diverse approach. That's the word. So what does diverse mean to you? And then what do you mean when you say people of color?
Okay. All right. Good. I knew you were going to get me on that. When I said it, I said I better stop. All right. So number one, a diverse, when you have had to work every day in your life and no one has ever opened the door and given you an opportunity. For example, in employment discrimination cases, we look at it through a different lens. I've been discriminated against. I know it when I see it, as opposed to having every door open for me, phone calls are made, I get positions. So I've got a realistic viewpoint. For example, I would raise at the Texas Supreme Court their hypocrisy. How can you not apply the same reasoning that we use to meet by Zoom, and you will not even apply that for the people of Texas? So they need someone who is very realistic, in touch with the various communities. You know, you just need someone who has some, as I tell the people, I'm from East Texas, you need someone with some good old common sense. All right, people of color, African, anyone that's brown, with the emphasis on African American.
Now y'all see why I got a PhD in common sense. Because most of the positions that you hold, you just have to have common sense to accomplish the goal. And some people just go over the top with it. So I'm going to ask you this one here because everybody wants us to ask. How do you feel about reparations?
Well, that is an issue that could potentially come before the Texas Supreme Court. And I am bound by the Code of Judicial Canons, so I cannot give an opinion on that. But I'm African American. My great grandmother was brought over as a slave to Texas. We did not get our 40 acres and a mule.
I ain't got mine either. I'm still looking for it. I know my people got a couple of donkeys in the field in Louisiana, but that ain't what I was looking for. Well, okay, well you couldn't answer that one, and I understand about the canons. I think it was Niall Copeland we had on. We talked about judicial canons. So yeah, Trump or Biden?
I'm a Democrat. Biden.
Donovan?
All right. Yeah. You know, here in California, as you know, Gavin Newsom did sign in the reparations deal. So it's something that might be coming down the pike.
Right.
And you made a reference that your great grandmother was a slave. So basically, we're only talking about a couple of generations that people can trace. Right. Exactly. Some people can just trace it straight back. So always keep that in mind when you're going with that. Now, what a lot of people don't know is Judge Williams has actually sentenced me to a couple of years in jail. No, I'm joking. She hasn't done that yet. But in regards to the Supreme Court, you know, when you get there and everything, there's a lot of things that are going on in the nation that is like, wow. And, you know, when you're on the Supreme Court, you guys are supreme. That's it. One of the biggest issues that we have, and I know a lot of people don't bring this up. I know you do corporate law and you do a little different. The child support issue. What is your stance on the child support issue? Now, let me clarify this. I believe parents, be it the woman or the man, need to support their children. However, if you, Judge Staci, lock me up, why is it that I am still responsible to pay? You know, I'm in the rears because I've been locked up for whatever my crime is or whatever I've done, or I have enough payment. What is your idea as I'm not sure if you're a mom or anything, but as a woman, in regards to the child support system? Can you talk about that?
Well, okay, very limitedly. In Dallas County, our civil courts are specialized. So I hear no family law issues whatsoever. I strictly hear kind of the civil commercial cases. At the Texas Supreme Court, being the highest civil court for the state of Texas, we have jurisdiction over probate, family, juvenile, and the general commercial. Again, I understand the position from which you're coming, but I think if such an issue actually made itself up to the Texas Supreme Court, I don't want to be recused. Look, I've worked very hard to get to the Texas Supreme Court, and there are law firms that make they make it, it's a war game and see which judges they can recuse. And the judge has the option, just recuse yourself. It's the path of least resistance, or you fight it and it just causes more of it. So all I can say is that you want someone with common sense, someone that has a background in reality, someone who understands both the sides of the fathers who have, I mean, there's some mothers that just make it a sport during the divorce to make the man's life absolutely miserable. So I can't tell you, you know, I'll be fair and balanced, but I'm not going to give you an opinion on.
What I mean by the law itself, some of the laws itself, do you believe it has to be revamped? Because some of this stuff just doesn't make sense as it's codified in the law.
Well, then that is the duty of the legislature. The legislature makes the rules, we interpret them.
Right, absolutely. And then as a quick follow-up, what is your stance on Biden's history?
Refer to as what? I mean,
you know, I'm just asking a question from an audience member. I want to know what the judge has to say about Biden's history. So Biden's history with the crime bill. Let's just talk about the crime bill.
Well, I guess I really don't have an opinion. I mean, I haven't studied it enough. I know there's a lot of criticisms and the effect that it had on the African-American community. And it actually started the whole, you know, the incredible percentage of African-American males being put in jail for relatively minor crimes. I do understand that. But I don't think I'm well-versed enough in it to have read it and make a criticism, you know, or support of it, although I do understand that the effects have been damning.
Wow, okay. Demetra?
So per, I guess, canon number 2, I guess, and that's the Texas Code of Judicial Conduct, if you will. It says judges are supposed to avoid improprieties or the appearance of improprieties. And so it is also known that lawyers or law firms rather can donate to campaigns of judges and things like that. And from what I understand, you know, that is coming to question because it's like, let's say you as a judge, and from what I understand, you are getting some campaign donations from law firms. Is that correct?
Oh, of course. I mean, lawyers are going to give you money. The issue is, look, in every courthouse, you know, which judges just do their fundraising and they're going to rule whichever way they want. And there are other judges, you know, who are swayed by it. But the whole I don't think you can make the ultimate decision, oh, because she accepts money from law firms, she's going to be biased towards that law firm. You can ask law firm, I've had lawyers give me money and the next day I've ruled against them in very important cases. They'll tell you, my campaign funds, I've got to run a campaign. I ran, just let me give you a little background about running for the Texas Supreme Court. It's in 2 stages. The first stage, you have to get signatures in each of the 14 Court of Appeals districts just to qualify. I traveled, I spent close to $80,000 just traveling the state to get. Yeah, law firms paid that. And now what? And then I had to campaign for the primary. So those are our sources. But I think it's up to the citizens to then track those judges, come to their courtrooms, see if they're following the law, see if they're ruling in favor of these law firms. You know, there's a big controversy right now at the Texas Supreme Court. A litigant, very wealthy, was very upset. He was an oil and gas executive, and he won at the trial court level, won at the Court of Appeals. And then when he got to the Texas Supreme Court, he lost. He said, wait a second, the law is supposed to be on my side. Well, he was rich enough to get his own team of statisticians and look at the record of the Texas Supreme Court. And what came out, the ultimate conclusion was, if you are a multi-billion-dollar company and you're represented by one of the favorite 9 law firms, you have the highest probability of not only getting the Supreme Court to hear your case, but once it does, the Supreme Court is going to affirm your position.
So let me ask you, what would be we have some feedback somewhere, I don't know where. what would be the purpose of a law firm to donate money to your campaign if you would rule against them? Because we know, I mean, those law firms in essence act as lobbyists. The probability of them just saying, hey, here's some money, we hope to see you win, is probably very slim. They're probably looking to get something out of it. So what would be in it for them to just give you money, or any judicial candidate, if you will, if there's nothing in it for them?
Well, you know what? I think it makes a difference at the district court level as opposed to the Supreme Court level. At the district court level, those lawyers want good judges on the bench. And so they're going to give you money. And you know what? The maximum per individual is $5,000 per person. It's $30,000 total law firm. But when you get to the Supreme Court, the Republican justices have PACs. I don't have a PAC. So the max that I can get, and I've never maxed out, would be $30,000. My opponent has Citizens for Jeff Boyd. He's at a law firm. His former law firm gave him $60,000. He's got major PACs giving him more than $30,000. I'm nowhere near that whatsoever. So I think when you compare the $5,000 that goes out the door every month to pay the fundraising consultant versus someone who's getting the money from one of the favorite nines, $60,000. Even if that law firm wanted to give me $60,000, I couldn't accept it because the way my campaign is set up, I don't have a PAC. And now the Texas Ethics Commission, 2019, they said, oh, you can loan yourself $100,000. Yeah, I'm a state worker. Like, I really have $100,000 to loan myself. Or my family can loan me, I think it's up to $250,000. That wasn't made for me.
So let me some more feedback. So I was listening to the confirmation hearing today, and I happened to just listen to the part where they were talking about dark money. So we know that dark money does influence Supreme Court justices, you know, in some way, shape, or form. They were actually talking about Justice Roberts, I guess 80 cases that he decided with. They were influenced by dark money. And for those of you guys who don't know, dark money is money that comes from donors, individuals or entities that don't have to disclose who they are. So what is your opinion of dark money influencing campaigns? And have you had any dark money donated to you?
All right. First of all, we need to understand the difference between the Texas State Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court justices go through the appointment process. They're not elected. They're appointed and then confirmed by the Senate. So they don't have to worry about running for election. In Texas, we run in partisan elections. I haven't really studied dark money because maybe I've been excited with the $5,000 donation. So, I jump hallelujah. I think when you use the term dark money, it's usually involved in the congressional races, and they create these various PACs. And they funnel money. When you see those crazy commercials on television and they have the opposing person in dark. But, we've been told that Karl Rove is helping the Republican judges in their bid to beat the Democratic judges. They've done some radio ads digitally. But, this election is about the people, and I'm not really concerned by it because the people know what's going on, and they really just want some common sense justices. We've got to bring the Texas Supreme Court back to the center. It cannot continue to be business as usual. The Texas Supreme Court looks like River Oaks Country Club. It needs to reflect the diversity of the state. And then maybe you've got someone who's experienced, who's qualified, and is African American, and we need that representation. And I'm not going to go up there and forget who I was. I haven't done that in the past, and I won't do it in the future.
This is a kind of personal question. As an African American, I don't know if you saw the video of what happened to George Floyd, but as an African American, how did it affect you?
It was devastated. I was absolutely devastated. I was stuck on my couch. Growing up and I hate to tell my age, in the 60s, I thought as a little girl that things would change. And they really haven't. All the advancement you think we've made, and it comes down to, it doesn't matter. If I walk into the store tomorrow, I'm going to get followed. If I get stopped by the police, and I've gotten stopped in campaign trips to San Angelo when I've been scared to death, because they don't first going to find out, oh, this is Staci Williams, a district judge. This is that Black woman in that car. So it's still scary. And, for I have a brother, a father, very close male friends. It's scary. I don't like for them to be out at night, and God forbid I tell them, when you get stopped, put your hands up, don't move, ask for permission to blink your eye. But it's scary because it's actually like, they've declared war on all of us, and it's traumatic.
Well, I'm going to tell you, you wouldn't want to ride in the car with me when I get stopped. But I'm cussing everybody I come to the window if I ain't violated no law. I don't care. Now, I'm going to ask you, because you're running a statewide campaign. A statewide campaign. And I just saw the great Senator Royce West lose a very close race. And I feel that he lost the race because they didn't attack and campaign as hard as they could have in the rural counties and the rural cities and different places like that. How hard is it to run a statewide campaign when everybody thinks, well, as long as she wins Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, she'll be fine? How hard is it to run a statewide campaign?
It is so difficult. It is so time consuming. It's easy to, come from Dallas to Houston, but when you go to East Texas, or you go to West Texas, or you're going down to the Valley, you've got to take into account the various norms and not bring in my Dallas style of campaigning, but I need to adapt in that area. It's expensive. And then just getting people to listen to your story. It's very difficult, but you've got to, you can't just rely on the major cities. Yes, they help. In fact, in the primary, I took 65% of the state, but I took 246 out of 254 counties. The only counties that my opponent got were counties where the votes were less than 65 votes. I even beat her in her own home county, Hidalgo, with 61% of the vote. But I got lots of obvious rural counties. You just have to go there.
That's a lot of traveling, man. I know I drove from Minneapolis to St. Louis, and we were hitting all these little rural towns, and I saw all the Trump paraphernalia. I saw so much Trump paraphernalia that it was unreal. And that's when it dawned on me that a lot of these elections, especially countywide, not countywide, statewide and nationwide, they're actually lost in them rural counties.
Yeah.
They're actually lost in those rural counties because a lot of politicians just kind of overlook the people that live off in, the prairie views and the little bitty towns. But those votes count just like everybody else.
Yes, they do. Every vote counts.
What is your view on the state of education in the state of Texas?
Well, the Texas Supreme Court has ruled in the past on public financing for schools. That is going to be another big issue before the Texas Supreme Court. The system's broken, but I think it's time for the Texas Supreme Court, rather than just punting it to the legislature, they're going to have to make some hard decisions.
It's definitely broken. Now, here's the best question I think on my ass all night, Demetri and Donovan. And I don't know, because, every now and then I get the urge, I go buy me a scratch off, Do you think that gambling should be legalized in the state of Texas?
I can't answer that.
Okay. Donovan?
All right. Hey, okay. That was a hard question. We're going to give you another hard question here. So, I've got 2 questions here. 2.5. What do you think they should do with the Houston Astrodome? Number 1. And number 2 of that question is, the Texans need a new coach. Who do you think it should be?
Okay, you would ask someone who doesn't know anything about sports. Actually, I have fond memories of the Astrodome, so I hope they keep it. I don't know if that's politically correct. Football coach, Deion Sanders.
Okay, well, he's already taken another position, but the Breonna Taylor case, here's a case that's really good. Now, there seems to be a problem in the judicial system where the DA, the judge, and the alternative attorneys all seem to know each other and run in the same circles, are all part of the same golfing club, things like this. Now, the state district attorney general in Kentucky is asking the judge to silence the transcript of the grand jury. Right. Now, in a democracy, as you know, in law, in a democracy, secret societies is repugnant to a democracy. We need to be open and transparent. So he sued to do that. And I think he did that because he didn't present the correct evidence and doesn't want that to get out. That's just my opinion on that. So a lot of, I guess the lawyers, you guys have a watchdog thing, like here in California, we have a watchdog thing, a bar association, whatever. I guess they're trying to get this guy tagged in that bar association. So I'm just asking a question as a lawyer, in your time as a lawyer, have you ever been in trouble with the bar association or been sanctioned by the bar association for any like problems you might have had with the client or anything of that nature?
I've never been sanctioned. After my first election, when I shook up the Dallas establishment, 2 weeks later, a client said I had abandoned her. We settled the case. But, I have clients who still have my cell phone and they call me all the time. So, yeah, no, we have, it's part of the job of an attorney. Things happen.
Right. And, and not every client's going to be happy because, like I said, you see a lot of clients that go in there and they get a plea deal when they could have fought, and then they want to sue the attorney later on or complain on the attorney later on. So, but in that case for Breonna Taylor, and when I was talking about the DA, the attorney general, and the judges, do you think that those entities should be separated? Because the relationship that you guys have with each other is so close that it's almost, depending on your situation, if my client is good with the judge, I might get a good outcome. But what if, my client doesn't know the judge?
Okay, so there are a lot of assumptions in there that I want to kind of whittle away. Particularly in the criminal court system, you see the same criminal attorneys there all the time. Some of the judges are either past criminal defense attorneys or past prosecutors. So over time, I think sometimes the conversations get a bit too casual. The problem is, and I'm not throwing it back, you need to hold these people accountable. And with cell phones, Zooms, and texts, all our hearings now are available from the state website. So you need to start holding these folks accountable. Like someone said, oh my God, there was a Black defendant who got 30 years and there was a white defendant who only got, let's say, 5 years. Hold that judge accountable. You have these organizations, and then when it comes election time, just because they come to your church doesn't mean they care about you. What you need to do is have the statistics and then force them, to be accountable and answer for those discrepancies. The problem, why a lot of reasons it helps, it happens because no one's watching the judges. I mean, in my courtroom, I welcome you to come in my courtroom. Some judges will have a brown paper lining so you can't look in. Someone needs to call out those judges. That property is state property. You pay our salaries, that courthouse, that courtroom. So it's time for the citizens to begin to empower themselves, because the only other way you're going to uncover it if you read through all the transcripts, which would be terribly, terribly painful. But it's just like, if you were a judge and Demetria was the prosecution and Gary was the defense, y'all have a relationship. And I've walked in the courtrooms and I've seen like, oh my God, I'm not going to get a fair deal because they all know each other. And I think it's also incumbent for the judge not to partake in that conversation that would lead someone to believe that the process was not going to be fair. And in that case, the judge can be called out on it.
Demetra?
So, Judge Staci, I went on your page last night and I saw that you were tagged in a post, and it says, bring this to the polls, but you don't stop at the top. And so I guess it's a flyer or something, and it basically says vote Democrat in every race. So that's the vote blue no matter who ideology that a lot of Democrats, and I'm nonpartisan, by the way, so I just want to make that clear, that a lot of Democrats espouse, vote blue no matter who. I've heard people say vote blue even if it's Kermit the Frog. Just, we got to get Trump out of there. And so what is beneficial for having Democrats run everything? Because we know that just because you're a Democrat or just because you're a Republican, that doesn't mean that you're going to do the right thing. So what is the benefit to telling people to take something like that to the polls with them?
Okay, I am a Democrat, and I believe that the system of government advocated by Democrats is best for society. Is it perfect? No way in heck. But I'd rather have someone, for example, as a judge, as a criminal district court judge, as a Democrat, because I think they will be fair. Will they be perfect? No. Likewise, on the Texas Supreme Court, I'm not going to agree when all four of us get put into the Texas Supreme Court. We're probably not going to agree on everything. But I think we're not going to, if we get all four of us on the ballot, we're not going to have the crazy, well, there's going to be four of us, but we just need one Republican to pull over. We're not going to have the insensitive rulings that are going on. I'm a Democrat and Democrats vote. You decide what you want to do. I have friends who say, well, I'm only voting for two of you and I'm voting for Republicans. In fact, the Houston Chronicle, I was the only Democratic Supreme Court candidate to get endorsed by the Houston Chronicle. So, and I think people will probably split their votes, but that's the mantra of our party, just like the Republicans. I was putting out my signs 2 nights ago in a Republican area, and it says, keep our Republican judges. So, both parties play it.
That is true. And I just didn't want to be disingenuous because night after night, we take Democrats to task. We do it, like I said, every night. And so I think when we hear something like vote blue all down the line, this, that, and the other, it does sort of give the innuendo that, or it says blatantly that Democrats, and you kind of said it yourself, are going to do a better job than Republicans. But we know that's not true. Because like I said, we take Democrats to task all the time on here. And so I think, just me personally, I think voters need a little bit more than, because we hear all the time, Democrats are for the people. And, to me, it's kind of like a blanket statement. So I think people need just a little bit more than, because like you said, the Republicans will say the same thing. Oh, Democrats, they want to give away everything and the farm or whatever, So I think people need a little bit more than just to go in there and vote blue no matter who. And so, do you have anything else other than,
Well, Demetria, you know what? It's just like, you see advertising. You have to do your own research. With the internet, I can say vote blue all the way through, but, I know there's some candidates not that great, but I toe the party line, but it's up to you to, attend forums, find out, and do your own research. So, if you decide to eat 10 chocolate chip cookies, whichever one you want, it's gonna, it's your bag. But
I don't know what I ate last night. No, I'm just kidding.
Because I ate it.
Real quick, Judge Staci, you just made a point that you told the party line. Now, I've always had a problem with that statement because, I take people to task here in California in my district. I worked on Mark Chicano. He's a congressman here, the first openly gay, whatever. We got him elected. He became what he said he didn't want to become, a politician. And we elected him to bring the bacon home to work for us, not to toe a party line. So when you say toe the party line, what do you mean by that?
And in fact, it was just so far as vote blue all the way through. If you talk to anyone in Dallas, I'm extremely independent. I'm going to do what I think is best in my judgment. And That's one thing when I get on the Texas Supreme Court. If the decisions are right and sound, then I will, sign off on a Republican opinion. What needs to be changed and why I'm specifically running for this position, my opponent's totally out of touch. There is a case called Bradshaw v. Bradshaw, a divorce case, and the wife objected to the trial court judge giving the husband 20% of the house. And she objected because her husband had been convicted of sexually abusing her children. So it went up to the Texas Supreme Court, and the majority said, hey, this is absolutely wrong, trial court judge. You're supposed to divide the property, a fair, just, and right division of property. This guy committed crimes. He should not have any part of this marital home. My opponent said, that's the law. The judge had discretion. Regardless of the effect of that rule of the fair and just division, I'm going to let it stay. But the majority of the Texas Supreme Court said, no, that's wrong. Likewise, there was a case involving Dr. Aliman from South Texas. He signed a death certificate as opposed to signing it electronically. The majority of the Texas Supreme Court said, wait a second, that's wrong. You get sanctions when you cut off the wrong arm, when you put the wrong eye drops in, when someone becomes blind. My opponent said he didn't sign this. He should have electronically signed the death certificate. He manually signed it. He needs to be sanctioned. So those are some of the common sense rulings that we just need to get back. And if I were sitting on the Texas Supreme Court, I would have agreed with the Republican majority.
Well, Kiki Will is asking a question that I was actually going to ask. We take a chance on voting politicians in every 2 years, every 4 years. And like Biden, a lot of people like, man, give him a chance. Let's overlook what went on with it. How do we hold elected officials
Gary, that's very easy.
Accountable?
It's very easy. Depending on the position, you can hold them accountable. I'm going to talk about being where people can hold me accountable. That's as a district court judge. Not only do I make good decisions, but I'm involved in my community. I created a program called the Citizen Civil Academy, which is a free, nonpartisan program to educate citizens about the civil court process, because everyone understands what goes on in the criminal courts, but they're clueless when I tell them, I don't put people in jail, I just make them pay a lot of money. So I pay for this program with my campaign funds, and I've taken it all over Dallas County. We've graduated 350 citizens, and from ages 7 to 92. And this is very unique, because you might talk to other judges in their programs, it affects their dockets. By the nature of my complex commercial docket, the people who appear in front of me, they know the system, they know how to work the system, but people need to be educated about the system, and we give them lots of information. In fact, one of the best kept secrets in the state of Texas, did you know you could talk to a lawyer for $20 for 30 minutes? You can do a free live chat on your computer to get answers to your legal questions. We give that type of information in the Citizen Civil Academy. So I say, hold me accountable. How many judges do you know take their campaign funds and use it for a program for the community and it doesn't affect their docket? You can ask anyone in Dallas. I am there for my community. I give sponsorships for any type of program that affects our community. That's how you hold people accountable. In fact, it ticks me off when they do give support to individuals who never step foot in our community, never do anything for our community. And they say, oh, well, that person's a D. And when I get on the Texas Supreme Court, I want you to watch and see how I help open the doors for appointments to various committees and boards appointed by the Texas Supreme Court. I'm not going to go hide up in a ivory tower. I will be out. I will be seen, because I'm going to first ask the Supreme Court to adopt the CCA, the Citizen Civil Academy. And if they don't, guess what? Guess what I'm going to use with those campaign funds? Take this statewide. Number two, I'm going to make sure that the Texas Supreme Court is actually more accessible to the people. Now, they do go around the state and give oral arguments, but guess where they have these oral arguments? At law schools. No, they need to take it to the people. They need to take it to community centers, actually bringing this court to the people. And I'm going to be an effective advocate. So I can say my track record, what I've done as a district court judge, opening up the guardianships, or opening up the receiver process to give us more experience.
Now, is the Texas Supreme Court a lifetime? Is that lifetime or is that its term?
No, we're elected every 6 years in a partisan election.
So let me ask you this, a quick follow-up. So how many terms do you expect to be? Because it just seems to me a lot of people that get elected, we still have civil rights people that were fighting civil rights when you were a little girl and I was a little boy that are still in office. They, by my cold, dead hands, you got to carry them out in a box. So how many terms are you expected to, do before you say, you know what, let me let somebody else jump in there?
Well, with the Texas Supreme Court, there is a mandatory retirement age of 72.
So you're looking at another 35 years before you leave the bench?
I love you. Thank you. No.
Well, let me ask you this question. How tough is it, whether it's statewide or countywide, citywide, how tough is it to be an African-American judge?
Oh my God, it's horrible. It is extremely tough. I have my colleagues who haven't showed up to work since COVID, and we don't have to show up, but we still have to have hearings. And I got a call from someone. They said, "Are you guys doing hearings?" I said, "We've been working since before. The state even gave us a Zoom license." But I have some of my white colleagues who haven't been to work, haven't moved their docket, haven't done anything. Now, if I had done that, I would have been on the Dallas Morning News so quick. It is still the good old boy system. You have bar polls, which I tell people, don't listen to the bar polls. It's a popularity contest. For example, the Dallas Bar, in order to participate in their poll, you have to be a member of the Dallas Bar Association. Because of the nature of the cases that I hear in my court, I have attorneys from all across the state, but they can't participate in the poll because they haven't paid $350 to be a member of the Dallas Bar Association. So, and guess what? Routinely, African Americans do very, very poorly in those bar polls. And let me add another thing. The Houston Bar Association had their judicial preference poll for the statewide judicials. Did they talk about anyone's qualifications? Did they even give you an opportunity to provide your experience? No. Popularity contest. And so with being an African American, you have to give your A game every day. There's no such thing as a B day or a C day. You've got to come with your guns loaded every day.
Demetri?
Well, I got to think, okay, now, my biggest thing is veterans. What is your take? Like I said, Texas is an amazing state. You guys have a lot of bases there, tax-free. Californians are moving to Texas, and that's when you're going to have a lot of problems in your criminal courts because all our gangsters are being gentrified out of here. So we're getting them out. But no, you guys do a lot for veterans in Texas and stuff like that. And I'm not sure if Texas has here in California, they've started veterans courts because you have a lot of guys that have served in the country, and you don't have to be like a messed up veteran, but you got people that have financial problems, or they might come through your court. Here in California, they set up to where they can go to a veterans court, and they could kind of look at that person's situation, particularly and how they did things. Well, what is your take on things for veterans and how veterans are treated after coming back from serving this country?
Okay, so in Texas, we have the Court of Criminal Appeals, which only hears criminal type cases. Where you find the veterans courts are on the criminal, what we call the criminal felony judges dockets. As a civil district court judge, you don't find those type of programs for veterans. You find the veterans courts on the criminal sides. In the major urban areas of Texas, our district courts are specialized. So we have specialized state district court judges who only handle the felonies. And I know of several veterans courts in Dallas that specifically address those issues.
So it is thought that the state Supreme Court it tends to be a little bit pro-business, basically ruling on the side of corporations and things like that, opposed to the individual. What are your thoughts of that, and what are you going to do to change it if you're elected to the 7th place there at the Supreme Court?
You know, you have to take each issue that comes before the court. I think I'll be particularly sensitive to see how the justices are ruling, but I can tell you that I'm not getting the $60,000 donations from various PACs and employees. I'm going to follow the law. And you know what? One of the beauties of writing a dissenting opinion is being able to call it out. The one thing you have to understand, these justices are smart and they're ultra conservative. So it's going to take a lot of work. But I think when all 4 of us get elected, we're going to look at things a bit differently, and we're going to try to ensure that at least the perception is not correct. And that's my concern with the Texas Supreme Court. It's just like, if someone said that my house was shoddy, then I would start an internal investigation to see what was wrong with my house and take the steps to ensure that it wasn't. Right now, the Texas Supreme Court, you hear over and over again, they favor businesses and they just sit silently by. So is that just because it's by design, or is it because they don't care? And that's why I've said on a couple of shows, when I get on the Texas Supreme Court, I'm going to advocate for an internal study to see if that is true. Where are the holes in the process? Because you just don't get an appeal at the Texas Supreme Court. You have to file a petition, and then they decide if they want to hear it. And then it goes to the next step of briefings and perhaps oral arguments. And if there is a problem, we need to identify where it is. Why is it that it's kind of laughingly known that they're the favorite 9 law firms who just happen to do very well? You know, the other side says, oh, those are just the best lawyers in town. And when you're a multi-billion-dollar company, you just get the best attorneys. Well, let's see if those facts are true.
So when you say the 4 of you, are you saying 4 like Democrat?
Yes, there are 4 Democrats challenging. We have it for the Chief Justice. We have it for 3 other places.
So if you all win, do you think it's a referendum on the Trump administration, especially since, all of the nonsense that has taken place out of the Trump administration? Do you think you'll win because of that, or really on merit? Like people, just really want to see something different?
I think it's going to be a combination. You have to remember, Trump is a federal issue. That's the marquee presidential race. Some people are saying, look, we need change up and down the record. So even though the state Supreme Court only handles state issues, those folks are Republican. They push the Republican agenda. We need change up and down the ballot. So I think it's going to be a combination. Or maybe some people just like us better.
Right. I got a quick question, we're winding down here, but I think this is an important question. It's going on all over the nation, but it's been a lot of stories there in the Houston area. And I know you're running for the state, but just in general, ballot harvesting. What is your take on ballot harvesting and how that's going in Texas? It's like a pandemic in Texas with ballot harvesting. And here in California, the ballot harvesting, not saying that Republicans don't do it, Democrats are getting caught a lot more than the Republicans are. So what is your take on the ballot harvesting that's going on in these elections?
I have read all the stories, particularly coming out of Harris County, and I'm very alarmed. When I first ran as a district court judge, the one place where I got whooped was in those ballots. I did great early vote. I did great day of election, but in those mail-in ballots, I didn't do well. And, there are rumors in every city, something's going on. I think like everything else that's going on in this country, a lot of things are coming to light. So I'm just kind of waiting and seeing what's going on and reading the reports.
So, and let me follow this up too. We're having a big problem now with state militias coming into fruition, and Texas has a lot of them. So hypothetically, you are now on the Supreme Court of Texas, and do you realize the KKK hasn't even been labeled a terrorist organization? So with the militias that are going on, I mean, how can a militia go and think that they can kidnap a governor? And what would you do sitting on the Supreme Court there in Texas in regards to the many militias that Texas has?
Okay, so the Supreme Court is not a legislative branch. In order to make any change or even recognizing that these militiamen are terrorists, first of all, I think the terrorist title has to come from the federal government and federal law enforcement. But if you want any similar state restrictions or prohibitions on groups like this, or them, walking the state capitol with their machine guns, then you need to work at the Texas state legislature to ensure that laws are passed, because it's absolutely crazy. And then it still goes back to holding folks accountable. Why is it that if 50 white guys are at the capitol with their machine guns, they're going to be treated just like, oh, that's cute. But if 50 black men did that, we know what would happen. But we've got to start holding our elected officials accountable, and then going down to Austin, demanding that your legislators enact or propose legislation to address those issues. But again, as judges, we will determine the legality of a law or enforce it.
Right, but back in the day, a judge would say something and said this is unconstitutional, and they would enforce. Remember in the 60s, they would enforce stuff, and then the legislature had no say so, and the cops would go and do what they got to do because the judge interpreted the law that way. And in some situations, there was no legal legislation to it, and the judges said Brown versus the Board of Education, they made a decision. But there was some situations.
No, it worked its way up.
Yeah, it worked its way up. But in some situations, the judge said this is what you're going to do, and then they enforced it. Why do we have to wait on a legislation when you're the judge? You guys are the supreme.
Okay, but wait a second. What you're asking, I thought your question was, what could I do with the terrorism? That has to be an issue to come before the court. In order for that issue to come before the court, you've got to have some type of legislation of law. With Brown versus Board of Education, that challenged the segregation laws, and it worked its ways up through the process. And then the Supreme Court said, separate is not equal. We're declaring segregation unlawful. So I think it's an understanding of the process and where judges come in as opposed to the roles of the legislators.
If you could tell the people one last thing, because I got a lot of people on here that have not cast their ballots yet in the state of Texas. What would you tell them?
All right, this is the most important election of your lifetime. I always say that, I'm old and I only have maybe 20, 30 years left in my life. But for you young folks, you've got 50 or more years left. The decisions that are going to be made in the state legislature are going to affect you. In fact, one of the most important issues is redistricting. Last year, the U.S. Supreme Court said that that's no longer a federal issue. It's going to be decided by the state courts. If you're tired of living across the street and your neighbor lives in a separate congressional district, or if you don't believe that there are enough African Americans or Hispanic legislators, first, you need to participate in the census. Number two, you need to ensure that your legislators are going to draw the lines correctly. And then those who sit as judges, because no matter what happens, this is going to wind its way up from the state district courts to the Court of Appeals and the Texas Supreme Court. And if you look at the Texas Supreme Court right now, there's no one that looks like us on the Texas Supreme Court. There's no one that might even have experienced life like we have in order to espouse that view at the Texas Supreme Court. Then You know what? I don't know what else to tell you. And the reason why we say vote up and down the ballot, if you're concerned that Black Lives Matter, if you're concerned about defunding the police, well, guess who makes those decisions? Your local officials, your mayors, your county commissioners. Who enforces the law? You know, we talked earlier today that you go into a courtroom and a Black person will get 20 years in a criminal context and a white person will get 10 years of probation. It's that criminal judge. So you need to vote up and down the ballot to ensure that there's fairness and equity. So you go out and protest, that's fine, but that is not your vote. That's not going to affect change. Your protest should be in the ballot box in order to affect change at every level of government. And frankly, if you don't vote, you don't need to protest.
Final thoughts, Donald.
Well, I just want to say I am highly impressed. Got some feedback. I'm highly impressed. I thank you for coming on the show. Please come back after you win the election, because you know sometimes people show up and then they win and then you don't see them until 6 years later. It's time to go at it again. But you know, we have a lot of issues going on in this country, and we need to strategically put the right people in the right place to make an effective change. So again, thank you for coming on the show, and everybody out there, vote your interest and, you know, do what you got to do. We hope to see you before 6 years, not after.
Oh, you will. If you'll have me back, I'll be back.
So in my closing arguments, like we're in a court, right? You know, I love your initiative, the Citizen Civil Academy, because, you know, I get tired of people who don't know what they're talking about when it comes to, you know, the court system, whether it's criminal or civil. And so I really like your initiative because you are taking the time to actually, and it's free, by the way, you know, from what I saw, it's free for people to get in on that class if you're in Dallas. But I love the fact that you're teaching people how it works, because if you don't know how it works, then you can't start or finish if you don't know how it works. But more importantly than you becoming a judge, I like the fact that you're a teacher and a leader. And in my opinion, leaders, they duplicate, they teach what they know. And so with your initiative, you're actually doing that. And so I like you. I like you because you're tough. You didn't run away from any of the questions. So I like you. So I do wish you luck. I believe that you'll be successful, and please do come back.
Thank you.
My man Saul Gillespie said, Monroe, you picked a good one. That's because I went and did my homework. I'm going to dig off into their business. I'm going to look at, you know, I'm going to look at everything I can look at in any race. And I appreciate you saying that, Saul. Based on who she's running against, it was a no-brainer once I did the research. So you guys that are in the state of Texas, you tell me why she shouldn't sit on the Texas State Supreme Court. I need y'all to come on tomorrow and say, I went into the voting booth and I voted for Judge Staci. This is how we change everything, by putting the right people in office. It's time for us to go and find the change agents and put them in office so that we can move the needle. You feel what I'm saying? I want to thank you, my friend, and I'm gonna tell you, if you ain't never seen me at the voting polls, I'm gonna get out. I might have a DJ out there on election day, but no matter what it may be, because you know we're on the south side of Houston, so ain't no telling what we gonna do on election day. Last time we had a whole party out there, but I'm gonna be singing your song for the next 3 weeks, and hopefully when it's all said and done, you will take your rightful place on the Texas State Supreme Court and do exactly what I know you're gonna do. But you know, if you don't do it, then expect me to come up in there cutting up, and you're gonna have to have them people remove me. But that's okay, because it's a limited public forum. As long as I don't threaten y'all, I can go off and talk loud and crazy all day long. So thank you so much for tuning in, y'all. You know, this is how we got to do it for a couple of days, because I'm running back and forth to the polls. So I appreciate my partners in crime bearing with me. You know, I'm getting ready. Got to go train tomorrow night, so I got to figure out my schedule, because Monday we start the War Zone morning show, and hopefully when you're in town during your election run, you can stop by one morning and sit in live with us so we can have a discussion with my good friend Rodney Bingham, comedian, been on BET everywhere, you know, and I'm proud of you. And I think I really did do some good research, and I think we found a good one, Demetri and Donovan. I think we really found a good one to represent not just the state of Texas, but to represent the African American community. So I want to thank my good friend Donovan Sadiq for tonight. The Queen Demetri K, our guest, Judge Staci Williams out of Dallas. In Dallas, Texas, I'm challenging y'all, man. I'm challenging y'all, my partners up in Dallas, man. Especially y'all boys that with your pants hanging down ain't paying your child support. Say, man, you might want to get some good judges in there, man, because I think child support is civil.
Yes.
It's civil. And you gonna be civilly punished if you go up in them courtrooms. Y'all know what it is. I'm in there now. I done been up in there. They got to get that money out of me every month. It is what it is. Until tomorrow, y'all, we'll talk to y'all.
Judge Staci.